In the history of cricket, there are records, and then there are legends. We're talking about those achievements that define a career, that people talk about for decades. Today, we're going to trace the lineage of one of the biggest crowns of them all, the record for the most runs in Test cricket.
I mean, what does it really take to become immortal in a sport? Is it just raw talent? Is it that crazy, unwavering dedication? Or maybe it's just the sheer endurance to outlast everyone and everything year after year? Well, this explainer is all about the handful of players who actually found the answer.
You see, this isn't just a number. It really is the Mount Everest of batting. To hold this record, it means you've stood up to the fastest bowlers on the toughest pitches in the most difficult conditions, and you've done it for longer than anyone else in history. It's the ultimate statement.
So here's how we're going to walk through this incredible story. First, we'll set the scene, what this Everest is all about. Then, we'll watch the crown change hands really quickly in the 80s. After that, we hit a period of stability with two titans who had decade-long reigns. Then, we get to the modern era with two absolute masters of the game. And we'll finish by asking, has the summit become untouchable? Before we dive into the names and the dates, you've got to appreciate the sheer scale of this mountain. Every single run scored in Test cricket is its own little battle. It's a story of grit, of timing, of sublime skill. The grand total? Well, that's the whole saga. Okay, so let's wind the clock back. Our story really kicks off at the start of the 1980s. It was a really dynamic time where the record, which had been held for years by an all-time legend, suddenly became a bit of a moving target.
And the benchmark, the number everyone was chasing, was set by the great Sir Garry Sobers. I mean, the man was a genius. His 8,032 runs, that was the peak. For any batsman playing back then, that was the number you dreamed of.
But then 1981 rolls around, and the guard starts to change. There's a new contender, a guy known for his incredible grit and focus, and he's making his move. And it was England's Geoff Boycott, a proper, determined, old-school opener. He just nudged past Sobers. It wasn't by much, not at all, but it was enough. The crown had moved from the Caribbean to England.
Boycott's time at the top, though, was pretty short-lived. Just 2 years later, another master technician was closing in fast, and he was about to kick off one of the most dominant eras in cricket history.
And that was India's Sunil Gavaskar. And let me tell you, he didn't just break the record, he absolutely smashed it. He established a pretty big lead right away, which basically sent a message to the world, I'm not just passing through, I'm here to stay.
Gavaskar's triumph really ushered in this incredible period of stability. I mean, for the next 22 years, this record would be held by just two men. Two tough-as-nails captains who pretty much defined their country's cricketing identities.
The scale of what Gavaskar did is just breathtaking. He held that record for a full decade. But you know what was even bigger? In 1987, he did something people thought was impossible. He became the first batsman to score 10,000 test runs. He created a whole new psychological barrier for greatness. But, as you know, all reigns have to end. After 10 years on top, a new challenger, a guy known for his relentless fight, his unbreakable will, he finally caught up to the little master.
And that challenger was Australia's Allan Border, Captain Grumpy himself. He was the absolute embodiment of Aussie grit, and by 1993, he had clawed his way to the top of the mountain, kicking off another long, commanding reign of his own.
I mean, just look at those numbers. They really speak for themselves, don't they? 10 years for Gavaskar, 12 for Border. Together, these two titans held the record for over 20 years. They were the standard bearers for an entire generation of cricket fans. Okay, so now we're jumping into the 21st century. The game is getting faster, the pressure's getting higher, and two new batting geniuses come onto the scene, ready to take a crack at these records that seemed totally unbreakable.
The year is 2005. Allan Border's massive record has been standing for a dozen years, but it's finally in the sights of a player with just breathtaking style and elegance. The Prince of Trinidad, Brian Lara, he had arrived. With that famous high backlift and that whip-like power, he just swept past Border. The crown was back in the West Indies. A new era had well and truly begun.
But Lara's time on top really set the stage for one of the most anticipated moments in all of modern cricket. Because another master, a guy who had been smashing records since he was a teenager,
was making his final approach to the summit.
And then it happened. The moment the entire cricketing world had been waiting for, October 2008. Sachin Tendulkar of India, the little master taking over from the original, finally overtakes Brian Lara. The torch was passed. The man who carried the hopes of 1 billion people now held cricket's most treasured batting record.
But Tendulkar, he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. See, claiming the record was one thing. What he did for the next 5 years was something else entirely. He didn't just raise the bar. He built a whole new peak in a completely different stratosphere. 15,921. Let that sink in. To put that into perspective, Tendulkar added almost 4,000 runs after he'd already broken the world record. It's a colossal figure it's hard to wrap your head around.
And his reign has been absolutely immense. He's held this record for well over a decade now. That's longer than anyone since Gavaskar's era. And in the modern game, with all the franchise cricket and the packed schedules, that kind of longevity is just staggering.
Which brings us to the big question, doesn't it? As the game keeps changing, and maybe with fewer test matches being played in the future, you have to wonder, did Sachin Tendulkar build a monument that's going to stand forever? Will we ever see anyone climb that mountain again?